Welcome in. It is the Dynasty Dummies 2026 Rookie Hootenanny presented by Fantasy Cares. JMic is here. I am here. We are back to talk running backs yet again in, a lackluster class, but maybe we'll have a little bit of fun today.
I'm looking forward to it, if for no other reason, we at least get to decide whether or not we get on the hottest, fastest, most exciting train ride, hype train that there is right now, Zach.
I'm so mad that I didn't push a little harder for the first six, because when we get to Mike Washington, he's been my running back 4 since December, and now it looks like we just bandwagoned on and we're following the combine hype and we're following that speed. And I don't even care about how fast he is. It doesn't that doesn't matter in our evaluation at all. And I'll talk about that here for a minute, if you don't mind me usurping this stage, because I've been thinking about the combine, and I think we need to acknowledge the combine, or maybe more accurately, we need to talk about why we don't acknowledge the combine. And I'm sure you could find 100 shows this week that are discussing the results, the 3 cones, the speed scores, and all of that, and why Mike Washington is instantly a stud, why Carnell Tate will never get open again in his entire life, why this class is suddenly good again because it's the fastest group ever. But like that's not us. Like we're the don't fall for it, don't end up in the pocket of big stopwatch. It's a small sample size when we have the entire career for comparison. It's not necessarily football activities, even though they do things like the gauntlet and they do things like throwback shoulder fades and all of that sort of thing. It's like the 40-yard dash is not how a football player attacks a run or a get off from the line of scrimmage. They're not in runner's blocks. They don't have to hold and go. Like, it's just a different thing. The numbers are great, and the fact that we've got numbers back and back and back, it's cool. It gives us consistency, gives us a long history of what people did at the combine. It's a lot of fun. Like, JMic, you and I were both watching, and we were both talking back and forth and seeing guys run fast and eye-open emojis. But there are probably numbers that matter. I'm not smart enough to know what those numbers are, but I am smart enough to listen when the NFL tells us what matters at the combine when they draft. It's the one time they can't lie to us. It's the one time where Brett Veach shows up and says, hey, I'm still trying to draft Tyreek Hill again and again and again because I got there just a year too late. And so I think that if you're listening to people and they're really adjusting for the combine, we're not going to do that because we're doing film. But if you're listening to people really adjusting for the combine and then adjusting again with draft capital, you got to be careful, because I think that the combine gets counted in the draft capital and you don't want to double dip on the importance of a 3 cone.
I mean, you mean the obsolete drill, apparently, that tells us so much about a player, but no one ever wants to actually perform it anymore.
Yeah.
The dreaded 3 cone.
Well, you got to be sub 7, man.
Not many people's hips Tell the truth these days. Shakira told us. Hips don't lie. Hips don't lie. I'm excited for many reasons, Zach, for us to be able to continue this journey forward. And as you've already mentioned, we'll end up kicking off with Mike Washington. Just a quick and brief thank you to everybody that's with us this evening, whether you're live in the chat, whether you will consume this at a later time and date via podcast or YouTube video, or who knows, all the intricacies and ways that the great folks over at Fantasy Cares allow us to be able to navigate and do this. But we're excited to be able to bring it to you. Again, a Dynasty Dummies production, if you will. Zach, we've got 6 players that we're going to go through today, and I'll give a quick rundown of the 6. And I know I took the lane and isolated and got us a big bucket there at the beginning. Did you have additional musings on your mind for this evening?
No, I think that was most of it. It really, I've been thinking a lot about the combine. I did start reading a little bit about biomagnification, but I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to approach that. So I just decided to go with the combine. And again, I think it's important to take those numbers with a grain of salt, to understand how you're evaluating, because if they matter to you, if those numbers matter to you, awesome. Like if you're listening to JJ Zacharyson and he's giving you like size adjusted speed score, that matters. It absolutely does. You know, if it's something he's putting in his model, it absolutely matters. Side note, I don't know if anybody listening to this listened to JJ last week, but I sent you a message, JMic, where he talked about the single most important metric in his running back model was receptions, and it was like I think it may have been like overall target share within an offense, but like receptions matter so much. So like we'll bring that back, but like there are things that matter. There are numbers that matter. There are smarter people than I am who know what those numbers are and will tell you, but don't get caught counting them twice.
We are prone as people to do such, to give a little bit more credence to something than we say. It's like, oh, he's really fast. Let me give him a plus mark for that. Runs fast at the combine. Oh, he is fast.
We love that confirmation bias.
No, fast guy runs fast is a good thing, and that's one thing. That's not many things. Yeah. Good deal, Zach. Quick rundown, folks, for anyone checking us out. 6 gentlemen that we will talk about this evening. And remember, if you don't hear the name of one of your favorites here, it doesn't mean that we're not going to cover them, but it does mean that we do want to hear from you of players that you want to hear on our catch-all shows that will come after the wide receiver episodes, that will come after the quarterback/tight end episode that you want to hear about. They're likely guys that we've already watched. It's just that we want to make sure that we're not here until midnight talking about players every night because we've watched a lot of players, and there's some other players that we absolutely want to be able to bring you, but we want to hear from you all as well. So again, in the chat, in comments, via DMs to Zach or myself, let us know. Now's the time. Don't wait until we actually get to the catch-alls. We want to be able to bring you some good things about what we see in those players. But the 6 for this evening, again, I referenced hottest thing smoking, as Ray GQ would put it. Mike Washington out of Arkansas. We've got Seth McGowan out of, Carry On My Wayward Son. Papa was a Rolling Stone. We've got quite the journey for Seth McGowan of latest. Shout out to Lexington, Kentucky, University of Kentucky. We've got the IU duo of Roman Hemby and Kaelon Black. Hemby, again, talk about roads more traveled. We'll get to that momentarily. We've got Claiborne out of Wake Forest. And then we will end the evening with a guy that I know you talk about, maybe not so much a king or prince that was promised, but someone that people were looking forward to for quite some time, specifically in the Devy space. Jaydn Ott out of Oklahoma. Again, another transfer that we'll get to as well. But we'll start with Mike Washington, Zach. Mike Washington goes to the combine, and you talk about bringing the house down. That man is, he can do no wrong at this point. And correct me if I'm wrong, Zach. I wanted to make sure that I recorded this properly. 6'2", 228 pounds.
Yeah. Big
large gentleman. Large gentleman. He goes in this season for Arkansas, has 167 carries for 1,066 yards and 8 touchdowns for a team that ultimately was pretty putrid for the entire season and really kind of become one of the cellar dweller type teams in the SEC. Mike Washington goes to the combine. Fast guy runs fast. And Zach, let me ask, you already let the cat out of the bag, letting us know he's your RB4 when it comes to film grade. We'll consider that a good thing in this class. Will we consider that a odd thing in this class? What say you about Mike Washington?
It's fine. It's a tough class. It's fine. He's fine. He's pretty good. But I'm going to take you back a little further. I'm going to take you back from Mike Washington to George Washington, who contracted smallpox in 1751 while visiting Barbados with his half-brother. He recovered, developed immunity to the virus that protected him during the smallpox epidemic, and led him to mandate vaccinations for all the Continental soldiers in 1777, a key turning point in the American Revolution. And while Mike Washington has neither fathered a nation nor contracted smallpox, although caveat, I don't actually know, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and say Mike Washington hasn't contracted smallpox. He did play 3 seasons in Buffalo before transferring to New Mexico State in 2024 and finally leading Arkansas in rushing in 2025. And he's got 2 seasons with over 20 receptions. So little check mark in that box. Mike Washington is an absolute load, 6'2", over 220 pounds, and he runs downhill. He punishes defenders with physicality and speed when he has a runway. When the opportunity is in front of him, Washington will run in chunks of yards. And although he is a bigger back, Washington is an asset in the passing game as well. A solid pass protector and just a bit above average as a receiver. I don't think you're going to line him up out wide and have him, run slant and goes or anything, but he's adequate coming out and ending up in the flat and that sort of thing. He's also exceptional at selling play action, which doesn't help your fantasy at all, but it was wild to see how many times Mike Washington would come to the mesh point, not get the ball, fool everyone on the defense, and half the time fool the cameraman.
He takes carrying out those fakes very, very seriously. Mike Washington, for me, is someone that is the epitome of, at the next level, whether or not you see him as a side of a committee or the kind of secondary supplementary B side of a committee, he seems to be the exact type of player that people will absolutely get excited about because of his ability to get the chunk gains that you talked about, Zach.
Yeah.
When there is space and if there is a runway given to him, he does a very good job of getting maybe not up to speed the fastest, but once he is up to speed, he is making the most of those opportunities, and that's when really he's at his best. It's not so much approaching the line of scrimmage, and it's not even so much at the second level. But really, once he's got space, he is on top of defenders far more quickly than they're ready for him to be. And many times, especially when that happens, that's when we see the run finishing that you talked about, that really, I think, helps him be set apart and helps him to maximize the opportunities when they arise, when space is there. I've said when there's space there, I don't know how many times, Zach, and I have some reasons for saying such, but what do you see from your scouting eyes, the flaws in his game?
Well, things break down quite a bit when Washington is forced to win with lateral agility or east to west speed, where he's unable to beat defenders to the edge. During runs off tackle, I think Washington has a tendency to push too close to the line of scrimmage, and that is part of what you're talking about when he loses space. That allows defensive line opportunities to stop his run before it started. And he really is an inertia runner. You know, he's got to have that runway. He's got to have that space. And I think Washington can also be a little over-reliant on physicality to win. Sometimes he tries to run through defenders, and that's not actually his forte, even though he is a big runner. Much of Mike Washington's future success, I think, depends on being paired with an offensive line that can create those open running lanes for him to get through. While Washington probably doesn't command a backfield early on, his combination of size and speed should provide some interesting opportunities for fantasy points during weeks where he has an early down role. And it's a little bit different. We talk about guys who are pass catcher pluses. Mike Washington is like the opposite of that, where like he is the, two down, the early down runner with a little bit of pass catching upside. Yeah. So not the ideal profile, but in this class, you can't be a chooser.
Far too often, Zach, far too often, Mike Washington is just content with giving up at the line of scrimmage when space isn't there. With his lack of creativity as a runner and his lack of ability to get out of trouble with early penetration and the lack of lateral agility that you mentioned, it's just one of those things that preference-wise, I don't enjoy that, because we know that so much of being a running back at the next level is that you have to deal with non-ideal conditions. Everyone doesn't get to run behind the Dallas Cowboys line that Emmitt Smith did. Nope. And like everybody doesn't get to run behind just absolute road graders who are constantly mauling. And we like to see you create for yourself. And as much as Mike Washington sprinkles in so much of the, somewhat plus pass catching, obviously plus when it comes to big play in space, getting chunk gains, things of that nature, it's the down-to-down inconsistencies that really have me in maybe not so much in a pretzel, but I just have unease when it comes to his overall tape. Yeah, I have unease. And so seeing him be fast at the combine's good. That's positive, but also being as big as he is, I don't know that he consistently runs that hard or strong, especially when it's like, okay, make a way out of no way with your 6'2", 228 frame. And especially with the list of guys that we're talking about in today's episode, I would argue that at least 3 of the players that we're about to talk about run harder on a down-to-down basis, just with more urgency than Mike Washington does. Again, is that preference? Sure. How does that equate to fantasy points? We'll see. But that's just what I see on film, and it's bothersome for me. It's hard for me to get around. I left out a key detail when we introduced him earlier on purpose. 5 years in college, 3 of which were at Buffalo. And in 2024, before he transferred to Arkansas, he actually had a stop at New Mexico State. At New Mexico State in 2024, He shared the backfield with our next contestant. Come on down. One Mr. Seth McGowan. Now, Seth McGowan, out of the University of Kentucky, I'll save you all the fight song and all these things. We talk about road less traveled, and I'll try to be fast through this because I know we have a lot of players and we ran long before, but I think it's important for people to know. 2020 is a 4-star recruit from Texas, signs with Oklahoma, runs for over 500 yards as a freshman. Or excuse me, 500 total yards as a freshman, I should say, rushing and receiving. 2021, McGowan's arrested for armed robbery. He's dismissed from Oklahoma. Pled guilty to felony larceny. Went to prison for 3+ months or 3 months plus probation. 2022, he restarted his football career at Texas College, which is an NAIA school. 2023, he went to Butler Community College. Now, 2024, he transfers to New Mexico State, and New Mexico State, really interesting group of players that they were able to get on that team. Shares the backfield with Mike Washington. Mike Washington runs for 725 yards and 8 touchdowns at New Mexico State in that year. Seth McGowan, 823 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he actually goes for 23 receptions for 3 touchdowns of his own at New Mexico State. He transfers one final time, finishes his career at Kentucky. He's 4th in the SEC in rushing touchdowns in 2025. He runs for 725 yards, 12 touchdowns with 19 catches to boot for 126 yards on a Kentucky team that had my friends and I bumping our heads against the wall many times over this season. Really disappointing year, but it is what it is. Okay. So, a lot going on with Seth McGowan's past, Zach. With all of that said, in terms of this lead up, this build up, all of what he's gone through, what are the strengths of what you saw on film for Seth McGowan?
I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. The conclusion of Frost's poem is one of the most famous stanzas of all time, and I don't think that there's anyone in the 2026 class who has taken a path less traveled than Kentucky running back Seth McGowan. You mentioned the redshirt year at Oklahoma. You mentioned the 3-month stint in jail for larceny. You mentioned serving that sentence, the probation, working his way back through community colleges, New Mexico State, and finally that standout year as a Kentucky Wildcat this past season. After those 6 meandering years, McGowan is still poised to make his mark at the next level. I think he is a crease runner, and he has this great ability to shrink his 5'11", 211-pound frame to sneak through holes that appear to be closed. Between the tackles, I think McGowan uses a combination of vision, acceleration, power, and quick jump cuts to carve out his own space to run in. When he gets outside, he eats up chunks of yardage with his speed and open field vision. And McGowan is even dangerous in the passing game. He's a good route runner, and his transition from the catch back to a runner is nearly instantaneous.
And he's someone who is making quick decisions at the line of scrimmage. And as you mentioned, Zach, just able to find the daylight in really ways that you don't think that his frame is going to be able to do, but he does. He almost, in that instance, is able to shrink himself and run like a smaller player. He's given defenders the sauce with jukes and really hard cuts that take me back to watching DeAndre Swift in college, because I feel like the dead leg was like his thing that he over-exaggerated. McGowan's is quicker, more decisive, not so much trying to like cross you over or anything crazy, but he's he's giving folks the business, which of course I like to see. He's sudden with his movements. I think he's a quick and violent mover. I said before, putting his foot in the ground with purpose. I think he has an ability to run through arm tackles and awaiting defenders alike, because he's finishing runs consistently. And I text you this the other day, Zach. Just what I see in Seth McGowan: death, taxes, and Seth McGowan finishing a run. I think that was just something I felt like I saw plenty of throughout the year. Even with his really awkward road, Zach, where might he struggle at the next level with what you saw on film?
So I think during an evaluation, a player tends to be what he does most often.
Yes.
And for Seth McGowan, that is be really inconsistent. So many of his brilliant, decisive chunk runs are counterbalanced by a carry that's rife with wasted movement. McGowan is a quick runner, but not a quiet runner. Yes. He stutters his feet and he spins his arm when he's trying to correct a cut that he's overrun. He also headhunts at the end of runs, so he's looking to deliver punishment instead of prioritizing an extra yard or two. We definitely won't invoke the name John Kelly, but we will keep that in mind. Yeah. As a blocker, I think McGowan gets in the way more than he actively impedes a defender. It's been a wild ride for Seth McGowan thus far, but his path has merged once again with the track that leads to the NFL. His inconsistency is infuriating, but his talent should be enough to land him on a team. I think McGowan won't start with a majority role in a backfield, but he runs hard, and I think that's worth a stash in your dynasty draft. That could make all the difference.
Yes. And he and Washington, interestingly enough, I don't know that they complement each other necessarily, but I think one of the same weaknesses some of the same weaknesses in that their lack of fluidity at times in terms of how they move is just awkward. And again, I hate to keep invoking names because I don't want to compare people, and that's not what I'm doing. But like I see these traits and start having all these flashes of players that we've watched before, and I think about how Leonard Fournette would have this arm doing this, like he's waving the runner home, like come on, as he's trying to turn. And when I saw that, I just immediately thought, oh man, I don't love to see that. I think his pass game repetitions are inconsistent when it comes to his trying to adjust to passes that aren't necessarily coming to him cleanly. And I think that he's occasionally content with running to contact at the second level. And literally it's the thing that we keep coming back to because we will not give up on John Kelly and the way that we saw, but that's something that I don't enjoy. You talk about, okay, sweet, I'm glad you're finishing hard, but you don't have to run to try to truck people at the end of every single run. It's not necessary. It's not necessary. Also, I don't know about his top end speed. You don't see a ton of breakaways. You do see the quickness between the tackles, but you don't see a ton of breakaway runs from him.
He gets caught from behind an awful lot. That was one of the things. And like as good a route runner as he is, and you mentioned him not adjusting to poor throw. I don't think his hands are great. He gets open a ton, but he's just okay as a pass catcher.
Yeah. Again, the lone bright spot in Kentucky's season. So I was rooting for him quite often, but yeah, just not ideal. But still a player that I'm excited to see where he lands. Speaking of players that I'm excited to see where they land, we are moving on to the only first person in the duo of the IU duo. There's got to be some kind of wordplay to play
those
with.
Those two Hoosiers.
Yeah, those Hoosier kids with national championships. Roman Hemby. Now, Roman Hemby, interestingly enough, played 4 years in the Big Ten prior to coming to Indiana because he spent 4 years playing for Maryland, the Terrapins. After really a strong sophomore season with the Terps, 989 yards on the ground and 10 touchdowns, 33 receptions for 298 and 1. He didn't really reach those same heights the next 2 seasons, 2023 and 2024. Enter transferring to be a part of the duo, the law firm of Hemby Black Esquires, if you will. Hemby was the A side of a committee, and obviously really workhorse type stuff from him. 230 carries in this one season at Indiana, 1,120 yards. We're looking at 7 touchdowns on the ground, and to boot, 17 catches for 165 yards, no scores. But over his 5 years in college, Zach, the man racked up 129 catches.
Yeah.
For 1,086 yards and 5 scores. That is nuts. There are some receivers that don't get to 129 catches in their collegiate careers. Roman Hemby's a guy, I think that I don't want to put the cart before the horse. I don't want to do this, Zach, but I'll simply say 6 feet. I think it was 207 at the combine. Didn't work out. Regardless, what did you see from one Roman Hemby?
So for kicks, I started to research ways to get from Maryland to Indiana. And I was inundated by methods of travel. A flight will cost you around $225. You can catch a bus for a pittance, just 80. Just drop that. The trip by rail will run you $175, but you get the pleasure of watching the lovely scenery of the Ohio-Kentucky border roll by while you sample white cheddar mac and cheese from the dining car. Roman Hemby took a little less traditional route, although one that's become increasingly popular over the past few years, the transfer portal. After 4 years as a Terrapin, Hemby landed in Indiana as the lead back for the eventual national champions and thrived. Although it won't score you a single fantasy point over Hemby's NFL career, I think his most impressive skill set is as a blocker. He squares up defenders, gets low leverage, lifts them, and he will even reset to maintain a block if they start to get off. As a runner, Hemby is very patient. He lets his blockers get out ahead of him, set up that run. And while Hemby's running style isn't particularly flashy, man, he is solid between the tackles, consistent, and nearly always manages to finish forward at the end of runs. And he's a sure-handed receiver, but I don't think he has a lot of dynamism post-catch. Like, I know that he racked up over 1,000 yards receiving. I don't think that he is going to be Achan where he can catch it and house one. He's a catch it, get the 7-8 yards, and let's do it again.
Yes. Zach, the phrase, and I love you talked about his consistency. The phrase that I wrote down for him is just spectacularly consistent. If there was for me, right, from my eyes, if for anyone who's been with us any amount of time, if you think back to what I had to say about Romeo Doubs, the wide receiver out of Nevada at the time, I was like, I just think that he just does everything pretty good. He does everything for the most part pretty good. And that's the way that I see Roman Hemby. I just think that he's pretty good at a lot. I think that he's pretty good at being able to actually, no, I take that back. I think that he's actually really good at being able to find open space. I think if there is space to be found, but specifically between the tackles, I think that he does a good job of being able to get there while not spectacularly dynamic, not someone that is consistently shaking people out of their boots or anything of that nature. If there's space to be found for him to be able to maximize what's been blocked or being able to at least create some modicum of positive gain, he does that so consistently. And I think that if you pair his consistency with the big playability of Mike Washington, then it's like, okay, we
Yeah.
are we're doing something really scary here. Like this is going to be something special. And I'm excited because if you're a guy that consistently has positive things happen when you're on the field and you can create a little bit, even if you're not necessarily hitting home runs, especially with his pass protection skills that you already highlighted, Zach, this is a player that I'm excited to be able to get behind to not even just see where he lands. He's just a guy that I think that his skill set and what he is consistent in at this collegiate level allows him the opportunity to have success if he gets any sort of opportunity at the next level. That said, he shares a backfield. He transfers from Maryland, so we know that not the perfect prospect. What is some of the drawbacks with Roman Hemby?
Yeah, it's interesting. Hemby's kind of the poster child for watching game to game to game to game rather than watching highlights, because there aren't very many Hemby highlights. Running behind a championship caliber offensive line covers up for multitudes of sins, but I think they're still lurking in the darkest corners of the C gap. Hemby does not have the speed to be consistently successful outside of the tackles. And between his lack of top end speed and a dearth of creativity, he rarely breaks long runs. When he does get to the second level, faster defenders catch him pretty easily from behind. Hemby gets tackled by the initial defender a lot as well. But when he does, that defender always goes for a ride. Like he's still churning and getting that extra couple of yards. Hemby's NFL draft stock will probably be inflated by the visibility and familiarity that comes with playing on college football's number one team. If that happens, Hemby has enough talent to carve out a viable secondary role between his pass blocking, keeping him in on high leverage downs, and his functional 3-down skill set. I think Hemby could prove to provide some fantasy points in the future, although I do think it seems unlikely that he ever commands a backfield to himself, especially long term.
I do think, Zach, with the lack of big playability from him when it comes to just the giant chunks, and again, if you watch him and his backfield mate back to back, which I know that I did in terms of games for Hemby, and then turn around and watch games for Kaelon Black, you see the consistency of Hemby, which is good, but you see Kaelon Black being able to run very similar plays. They're not necessarily different plays for each player in terms of things that they're dialing up for them. But Kaelon Black is, I won't say consistently, but far more often able to strike gold when it comes to hitting big plays, big chunks, and just being simply quicker to the second level, quicker to open space, all of those things. And I think that's the one area that disappoints me most. I think I see it a little bit differently than you when it comes to the contact balance that I think that Hemby displays. And I hate to keep going back to Mike Washington, but I just think through just how these two players specifically complement each other uniquely. And I feel like Mike Washington was someone, especially when there was little space, like just going down very easily. Whereas I didn't necessarily see that the same with Roman Hemby. Not that his contact balance was supreme or special, but I did see that it seemed as though multiple defenders would have to make the play on him for the play to stop.
Yeah.
And so, it's weird because it's, again, spectacularly consistent isn't like no one's giving you the Nobel Peace Prize for being spectacularly consistent, but that's how I see him. And he's somebody that I am excited about for sure. On to the next one. Staying in Indiana, Bloomington, with Kaelon Black, his backfield mate for the Hoosiers, national champion Hoosiers. I know whoever y'all listen, whoever you are, I know that you're listening and wanting us to mention that. We'll give you your props. Kaelon Black, another player that transferred. Matter of fact, I think we're dealing with almost exclusively transfers in today's episode, Zach. Started his career at James Madison with Coach Curt Cignetti, obviously, who was the head coach at James Madison. Kaelon Black was one of the players that came with him to Indiana in 2024. And in 2024, you would not have guessed that there was anything cooking with him at all. 46 attempts, 251 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But 2025 comes around. Again, he gets to compliment Roman Hemby, and he has a heck of a year. 186 attempts for 1,040 yards, 10, count them, 10 rushing touchdowns. While he only got 8 total catches over 2 seasons at Indiana, Zach, he did rack up 44 catches in 2 years with James Madison for 6 total touchdowns over those 2 years with JMU. While we're not perhaps as excited for Kaelon Black, I think there's some good things to talk about regarding his tape, Zach.
Yeah, Indiana University has had a number of notable alumni, from a Nobel Prize winner to ambassadors to an a cappella group. Times like these, though, I think call for a darker world-building creativity like Hoosier Suzanne Collins, the author of The Hunger Games. Perhaps she could spin a tale of heartbreak and perseverance, the overlooked underbelly of a national success as a smaller, less heralded warrior is passed over for Roman Hemby, not invited to the combine in spite of his 1,000-yard season, and in spite of being a cog in an unstoppable machine, the reaping over and Kaelon Black standing alone, unchosen, staring at a treacherous path ahead. Black doesn't possess Collins' level of creativity, but he makes up for it with sheer dynamism. He explodes to the line of scrimmage, whether a hole is opened up or not. And we'll talk about that a little later. But although Black rarely improvises, he's often able to find a way to jump cut towards success within the confines of a play. So he's not taking it to a different gap or bouncing outside, but man, he is able to find space where it doesn't look like there is any. He is a crease runner, seemingly shrinking to slip through the line of scrimmage and keeping a low pad level. And defenders rarely take Kaelon Black down without squaring him up. You're not going to get a glancing blow and take him down. He has very good feet as well when the hole gets cluttered.
Yeah, strong lower half, especially with that piece of in traffic. And I think just a player that is incredibly bursty when it comes to, again, and I may mention this when we talk through Roman Hemby, the difference between how he's able to get through and close distance to the second level. I don't necessarily know what his top end speed is, but someone whose acceleration and burst afford him the maximization of those small areas that you're saying that he's able to get through, Zach, which I think that is strong. And again, a guy who is working to finish runs consistently. And oddly enough, at least through his tape, I would have thought that he would have gotten an invite to the NFL Combine, but unfortunately, he was left off of the list. And so we didn't necessarily get measurements for him from the NFL Combine. But Zach, let's talk through what could be some of the pitfalls for Kaelon Black.
Like any great protagonist, Kaelon Black has his share of fatal flaws. He's very frenetic behind the line of scrimmage, and he will sometimes stop and stutter his feet while he tries to decide which path to pick. Between the tackles, Black often misreads space and gets himself into more trouble. If he thinks he is about to be contacted, he slows down to cut rather than going on the attack. And you mentioned that burst. man, that's such a weapon, and he just completely negates it by slowing the cut.
Yep.
Although he had a 29 catch season at James Madison, I think Black is a subpar receiver, leaving him a fairly one-dimensional backfield piece. It feels a little like dystopian fiction to have such an integral part of a championship roster cast aside immediately after a win. But if Kaelon Black is going to stage a rebellion, it's a better narrative if he starts from these humble origins. Given his skill set and the recent influx of talented secondary backs in the league, it's hard for me to see a path to fantasy relevance for Kaelon Black. But if you do throw a dart at him in your rookie drafts, may the odds be ever in your favor.
Way to close. Way to close. Way to close. Well said, Zach. I think there are some positives that are good for him. I'm just curious if he's good enough at any of the things to have a role of any type in a backfield. Like, I feel like if there's someone who's going to be a power runner, then they'll likely have an opportunity to do that better than him. I just don't know. I think that he lacks the top end ability in any specific trait that's like, oh, he gets on the field because of this, and he can stay on the field because of this. It's just not there.
Yeah, not a lot of teams looking for the first 4 steps in a run as like the thing that you want to put on the field.
Yeah. Okay, we are moving on to one Damon Claiborne, the only player that we've talked about today that was true to his first collegiate love, Wake Forest Demon Deacons. No transfers for Damon Claiborne. Claiborne measured at the NFL Combine 5'9", 188 pounds. Oh, boy. But with that, we still saw a really productive player, especially the last 2 seasons at Wake Forest. 2024, we saw 220 carries for 1,049 yards, 11 touchdowns, 23 catches. Zach, we love to see it, for 254 yards and a couple of scores. 2025 didn't quite build on that performance in terms of raw numbers, but he was a more efficient player on the ground in that he had 179 carries, 907 yards, which was good for 5.1 yards per carry, and 10 touchdowns on the ground with 28 receptions for 140 yards. Wake Forest, not exactly the bastion of NFL talent per se. With that said, he's acquitted himself well, especially over the last couple of years, Zach. So when we think through Damon Claiborne, again, 5'9", 188, oh boy, what are his strengths in his game?
Well, I don't know, JMic, if you're feeling especially magnanimous and decide to give Wake Forest credit for Ken Walker, who was there for 2 frustration-fraught years, then the Demon Deacons running back position is okay. But really, you're right. It's long been an empty well, and the hopes of the 2026 draft class lie at the feet of Damon Claiborne, that elusive, but you mentioned undersized, right? Lead back. Like most backs his size, Claiborne relies on speed to separate himself from defenders. But I think it's his patience that separates him from his peers. Claiborne does well scanning and waiting for his lineman to create a hole before he darts through it. And that's something especially important given the fact that he is undersized. Him having the wherewithal to allow the blocks to set up, to create that hole and then slip through it is very important. And once he decides to go, he is a quick accelerator. He gets up to speed before he hits the second level and can fly. And Claiborne is especially effective off tackle, where he has the speed to get to the edge and turn upfield into space where he has the ability to do some damage.
Get Demon Deacon. We're talking about a space demon. I mean, Claiborne is a fun watch, especially when it comes to the acceleration piece that you talked through, Zach. One of the things I feel like that's most, for my money, one of the things that I really like to be able to see is running backs be able to get up to speed quickly. And when you're able to do that, but also pair that with the patience that you talked through earlier, you now become a really unique weapon in that you allow things to take place in front of you, and you can consistently catch defenders off guard by making it through gaps and areas far quicker than they're anticipating. And I think that so much of what he was able to do was to some degree put people to sleep when it came to his approach to the line of scrimmage, but what he's able to do to be able to get up and get through. Really, really fun to watch that aspect of his game. All of that said, Zach, he's the fifth back that we're talking about. So what are the limitations that you think that could possibly be holding him back?
So I think that there is some cognitive dissonance to Claiborne's game where, you talked, he's sub 6 feet tall. He's 188 pounds. That frame seems ideally suited to outquicking defenders. But so often Claiborne is unable to defeat an initial defender who gets penetration one-on-one. Like, he's really good at finding the hole, really good at being quick through the hole, has trouble with that one-on-one defender who gets into the backfield. And this lack of lateral creativity means that many of his runs are confined just to the space that has been blocked. And that's so frustrating for a guy who is dynamic in space. Claiborne also lacks the functional power to break tackles, to move piles, or to be an effective blocker. So those are all negatives to his game. While the 2026 iteration of the NFL should be a petri dish primed for smaller backs to thrive, Damon Claiborne doesn't quite have the chops to command a backfield. His adequate pass catching and his speed in space are probably enough to find himself as the third wheel of a backfield, but I think his fantasy impact feels like it will need a lot of luck to find enough volume to be relevant.
And that's the thing, Zach. the man, I have a hard time seeing the volume being there, and the lack of, even in a small frame, the lack of power that's consistently in his game. I think just it's not exciting. That part of it is not exciting when you think through what he projects to be at the next level. Yeah, I'm going to leave it there. Other things I have written here to say, and I'm just going to leave it. Final player of the night. We are now moving to the one, the only Jaydn Ott. And for anyone who's played in any sort of Devy leagues, Jaydn Ott has been a player that I think people have been pretty excited about for a while. The thing is, he began his collegiate career at Cal, spent 3 years there, and then transferred to Oklahoma to ideally be the running back for the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, here's the thing. In 2023, at Cal, where he shared a backfield with Fernando Mendoza, right? 246 carries, 1,315 yards, and 12 touchdowns. To put that into perspective, Zach, his first 2 years at Cal, he had rushed for combined over 2,100 yards, 20 touchdowns, and collected over 70 catches. I think people were ready to take him one-on-one whenever he was ready to come out of the
So much buzz. Much buzz.
The hype train was real, and he comes back in 2024. I know that he dealt with some injuries and some things going on there. He only rushed for 385 yards over 10 games there at Cal. Transfers to Oklahoma, and man, this was not it. 68 total yards on 21 attempts. We never quite saw him on the field. I know that he dealt with some injuries and whatever else might have been happening behind the scenes. But my word, was that a real wet fart at the end of what was a promising and exciting start to a collegiate career. I don't have his measurements currently, Zach, so maybe that's something that you're able to pull from. I feel like that he was at the NFL Combine, but I don't know that he necessarily performed. Regardless, point being, Jaydn Ott started amazing, did not end his collegiate career amazing, and now we're left picking up the pieces of who exactly is this player that showed so much promise. So with that, Zach, where could he realistically go as a player? Are we looking at a guy who's really that guy, or what do we have here?
So there are a few Otts that you ought to know. Miriam Ott won 2 silver medals as the skip for the Swiss Olympic curling team. Fred Ott and his handkerchief appeared in one of the earliest known motion pictures, the Edison kinetoscopic record of a sneeze. Mel Ott hit 304 in his 21-year career for the New York Giants and is one of 28 players ever to eclipse 500 home runs in the major leagues. And Jaydn Ott, the running back who burst onto the scene with the California Golden Bears, but finished 2025 injured and underappreciated in Oklahoma. Jaydn Ott has exceptional patience. It's so good that he will revive runs that appear dead, reassessing and running to daylight. Last year we had Cam Scatabo, who would it would look like he was tackled and he wasn't down and he would just keep going. Ott's a little different, where like it looks like he's done. It looks like he's got no space, and somehow he will take a step back, reframe, and find extra running room. When running inside, Ott's vision allows him to pick through traffic, to extend runs and add those extra yards. And at the end of a carry, Ott isn't done until he spins through tacklers like an alligator performing a death roll on its prey.
Goes that spin again. Somebody working that spin one more
I
again.
much prefer it at the end of a run than I do in the middle, though.
Do you hear that, Jeremiah Love? Do you hear that? My word. Yeah, and I think that you said it best, Zach. Combination of patience and being able to get to and find that open space when he's at his best. When we see what he's putting in those first couple of years at Cal, I think those are the games that you're like, okay, if this is the trajectory with this base set of what he has, what he's going to develop into is going to be amazing. And I think that while we didn't necessarily get those things moving forward from there, I do still feel as though hallmark trait, patience. I like what he's able to do from a standpoint of being able to let things work out in front of him, and for him to be able to find the space to create big plays throughout his collegiate time. But again, Zach, we talked about this, and excuse me, cover your ears, children, ending on a wet fart. What struggles did you see on his film?
So I think the first 3 steps of a Jaydn Ott run are crucial. He's tremendous once he is through the line of scrimmage, but man, is he susceptible to defenders who get that initial penetration in the backfield. He is not a dynamic cutter, and he rarely gets himself out of that trouble. Ott slows down to cut or when he anticipates contact. So like he slows down just to cut, not even like thinking that he's going to get hit. And sometimes he comes to a complete stop while he processes where he's going to run to next. And I think it is impossible to be hyperbolic about Ott's atrociousness as a pass blocker. He may be the single worst, and receivers included, he may be the single worst pass blocker that I have ever seen on film. He rarely shows interest at all. And when he does line up a defender, it's a fake. Ott jumps out of the way like a frightened matador and just lets the bull go by. I think Jaydn Ott is a capable runner who is spectacular at times running between the tackles. In recent seasons, the shine has come off an awful lot due in large part to injury. I think if he's healthy, Ott could carve out a share of early down work in a committee. But, man, he does not feel like a priority pick either in the NFL draft or in your rookie drafts. There's not a high ceiling, but definitely not an Ott.
Shout out to Mel Ott. I think my favorite of the list that you had there, Zach. More than anything, and this is far less film related, so please forgive me, everyone, because I know that that's what we talk predominantly about. I just want to know who he is now. Who are you as a player now? Are you still like? Is there anywhere inside that shows us those first couple of years at Cal where I think that there was a lot of confident movement to what he was doing and how, while not always dynamic, I think that he had enough in the tank to be able to do some, maybe not special things, but some really, really good things. And then again, is it health? Is it some other stuff? Like, where is that guy that we saw? Because this is one of, and I know that we've referenced it before, kind of the fall from grace from Braylon Allen, from Ollie Gordon, from what we saw before to their final year, to even the likes of this season with Nicholas Singleton. What happened? I want to know what happened, because I think that there's probably some goodness to be had if he's anything like that guy that we saw early film on. But if it's what we got in these last couple of seasons, I'm not excited. I'm just not.
See, that's what we need from the combine. Release the tapes. I want to see the interviews. That's what I want. I want to get behind the scenes, to listen to these guys talk, to kind of get a little bit of the psychology. I don't think you can, in a 5-minute interview or a 10-minute interview, get a full picture of a person. But man, I think you could glean some really interesting details, and Ott is definitely one player that I want to know what's going on in his head, because man, there was so much talent. You're right. The first couple of years at Cal, there was so much going on and so much potential. And even just being on the field at Oklahoma, and he had a couple of injuries. He had a shoulder, and he had something lower body as well. But there was such a disinterest and there was something more going on, and I'd love to know what it was.
Yeah, will we ever know the story?
Nah,
probably not. But I wish we would. I wish we would. All right, Zach. The time has come. We've got to be able to deliver to the people how we have these 6 players stacked up amongst themselves as a group, but also how we have these 6 running backs stacked up against their peers from the prior week's episode. So now we've got 12 players that we'll have film grades for, that and eventually Zach releases this information in terms of his tiering, his rankings. And obviously he's also going to highlight how you can get his film notes when it comes to partnering there with Fantasy Cares and navigating that. But I am really curious, Zach, if there is clarity in the tiers that you have between these guys. I'm curious if there is separation. This is going to be fun because I'm willing to guess that how we have these 12 won't necessarily be the
No, it's going to be all over the place. And I think that's going to be this class. I mean, we talked about it in 2019. We talked about it in 2022. Like, you have a class where it's difficult to discern differences between players, and it makes it a free-for-all. It means that you and I, who do evaluations very similarly, will have differing opinions because these players are so tightly grouped together. For me, with this 6, I have Mike Washington as the first player, although in a tier with Roman Hemby. So there's not a lot to me to choose between those two players. I like is a strong word, but I like those two in the context of this class reasonably well. Seth McGowan is next, and he is at the top of the next tier behind those two. And for context, that's a tier with Nicholas Singleton, so he's in decent company. Then Jaydn Ott, then Black, and bringing up the rear. You can't tell if he is really far away or if he's just that small. It's Claiborne. If you want to go like the players that we've talked so far,
yes,
obviously Jeremiah Love is in a tier, probably 2 tiers above everybody else. I have Emmett Johnson next in a tier by himself, although close to that 3rd tier. The 3rd tier of Jonah Coleman, Mike Washington, Hemby, Katron Allen, and Jaydn Price. Then McGowan, Singleton. We haven't talked. I get a couple guys in there that we haven't talked about yet. We're going to have to go back. I'm going to make a request for the catch-all that we talk about: Jamari Taylor and Jam Miller. And then a tier below that is Ott, Kaelon Black, and Claiborne. And then there's an Adam Randall in there. But we don't. It's fine. We're good. He's a.
Oh man, this is fun. The man, I'm struggling to even get it out, Zach. It is so flat.
Yes.
So I think I have a good separating point. The tier of, for me, and again, these first 6, Seth McGowan and Roman Hemby are a point off film grade wise. Mike Washington is a point off from Hemby. Then I've got Kaelon Black, Jaydn Ott, Damon Claiborne. They're the bottom of the 12 if we stack that up. So those 3.
Yeah.
Black, Ott, Claiborne. When I open it up, though, Jeremiah Love is my 1. My 2nd film grade does go to Jaydn Price. My film grade number 3, and this is where the tier is long. So I'm going to list these names, but I want you to know that they're separated literally by 3 points in total grade. Katron Allen, Seth McGowan, Roman Hemby, who I must say, Roman Hemby is my favorite watch. I want to be clear. I really like Roman Hemby. Emmett Johnson, Jonah Coleman, Mike Washington. So literally, we're talking about people who have the same grade or are a point from each other. It's weird. Then Nicholas Singleton, and then the last three guys that we said: Kaelon Black, Jaydn Ott, Claiborne.
Yeah, it's literally the anatomy of a bad class.
Yes.
Like it's guys who don't have enough talent to separate themselves at the top, and then a big mess of guys who are all doing different things. So where they're scoring is in different places because Emmett Johnson is nothing like Mike Washington,
Nope.
but scoring similar. Like it just that's the anatomy of a bad class. Bad using air quotes. like it's just a flat. It's just flat. What was it? The parody that I put in last week from 2022 is it's a new class, but there are no trees. Like the Midwest, just a flat prairie, and that's where we are.
And it's strange because I'm curious where people are going to pick and choose their spots to go in on these guys, or if people are going to let draft capital be the deciding factor or landing spot be a deciding factor. I'm really curious what hills people are willing to invest in for teams.
I am really close to, and we talked about this last week, just trying to get out of it for now. Try to add veteran, like guys that I know that are good, that are productive, that are no longer in vogue. And then when we get into drafts, if there is a player who falls that I like and can get into for a price that is palatable, I think that's how I'm going to attack it. And that was how we attacked 2022. It was sell, 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 and then everybody was saying sell, and then we looked at each other and we're like, if everybody's saying sell, that means that it's a buyer's market. Let's go. And that's fine. We'll go get Garrett Wilson, and we'll go get whoever it was that you were excited about beyond Breece Hall in that class. And I think it's going to be very similar, where it's whoever you're excited about beyond Love. But there probably aren't many Olaves and Londons and Wilsons in this group. But
yeah, that was the Kenny 3-6 class. Kenny Walker class when it came to Breece likely being the belle of the ball, right?
Best runner in the cap. Oh yeah, we thought it was Breece Hall and like Walker was the best runner in the class. I hate to bring up JJ again, but I really enjoy his show, and I think he's really smart. But he talked again about Ken Walker with the running backs and the pass catching, and he said people yelled at him also about Ken Walker because when people hear he's not likely to be a receiving back, what translates in their mind is he can't catch, and that's not necessarily what's being said. But the chance of somebody who doesn't have a receiving profile coming in the NFL and catching 50 balls is not it's not a good bet. So
nope.
I digress again, but I'm enjoying all of the metrics crowd finally coming on board with the pass catching is huge for running backs. Makes me happy.
Finally, welcome. We've been expecting you, or maybe not expecting you, but at least we're glad you're here.
We left the light on,
Yeah. Zach, I think things. There's going to be some furniture moving around here. I think some things are going to get a little bit more interesting when we talk through these wide receivers over the next couple of weeks. The projections from a standpoint of draft capital are going to be fascinating, and I think I know you like I know you. We're going to have at least a good bit more positive things to say about some players that we can really get behind and get excited about to some degree with this wide receiver class.
My homework is to go back and rewatch and watch more Mekhi Lemon, especially from this past year, because I did my initial run through Mekhi Lemon and it was very tepid. And I have seen a lot of people be a lot higher. And I want to go back and reaffirm where I am or make an adjustment before we talk about him. So that's going to be my homework for the week. I've got everybody else done. I know we're doing wide receivers next week and the week after. And I'm excited about that, as excited as you can be with this class. But I also think that we purposely did running backs so we could get into the meat of the wide receivers after we got our second win. So
business is picking up, folks. Business is picking up. Excited to be able to continue to do this with you, Zach. This is always a good time, and we've trucked through these running backs onto the wide receivers. Thank you to everyone watching live. Thank you to everybody who's listening via podcast or any other medium that you're leveraging us. As we often say, and I speak for Zach in this, we don't take your attention, your eyeballs, your ears, your focus for granted. Thank you. In a wild and chaotic world, in a crazy draft season, in our little sphere of the world in terms of hobbies and things go, you could literally spend your time doing any number of things. And the fact that you allow us to be able to inform your opinion, to be a part of your process, to learn these prospects and order them how you see fit, it's just really cool. So thank you. We appreciate you. And we hope to continue to steward the opportunity that you give us very well. Zach, that's all I've got. Excited to be able to continue forward. Let's get it.
I love it. It's so much fun. It blows my mind. Like the amount of love and fellowship that we get from the community with this year over year is it warms my heart. It blows my mind. It is so much fun, and it is an absolute labor of love. And to be able to do this with you and have other people find value in it is absolutely incredible. We will be back next week, same time, same place. We'll be right here at Fantasy Cares YouTube. And if you're listening to the show on Dynasty Dummies podcast, we appreciate you too. We'll be doing wide receivers next week, wide receivers the week after that. If we missed any running backs, shout out at us, because we do the catch-all shows. We want to make sure that we talk about players that you're interested in. I just got 2 DMs from @TacitAssassin13 about players. So we got to talk Jam Miller and Jamari Taylor, and we'll figure out who else we're gonna talk going forward in the catch-alls. But we appreciate you being here. Appreciate you listening. It's always a good time. JMic is at JMic. Check. I am at TacitAssassin13. Fantasy Cares is at FantasyCares.org. That's ORG. Dynasty Dummies are at Dynasty Dummies. Thank you for listening. Thanks. And then I gotta come up here and press a couple of buttons because I didn't prepare myself.
Go. Oh
no, it closed. What's going on?
Way.
What's going on?